I made the announcement, Swally, so whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good morning, good Erev Shabbos. Happy Hanukkah. The topic was listed Hanero, Sololo, and donuts. I want to talk about donuts first. It's a fascinating custom, and it has some very ancient origins. The Rambam's father, Rav Maimon ben Yosef, wrote an Arabic commentary to the Siddur. And in that commentary, he mentions the importance of old minhagim. Ein lahakel, he said. And by the way, Rav Soloveitchik also was a big fan of understanding the roots of customs. So the Rambam's father says we should not be lenient or minimize any minhag that has been accepted. And he especially talks about minhagim to celebrate and publicize the holiday of Hanukkah. And he says, Upashat ha-minhag. And he's writing now in the 9th, 10th century. The minhag has spread, and he's talking in the Arab countries, la'asos sufganim, to make donuts. And he gives an Arabic name, al-splung in Arabic. And those donuts were made with honey. And it's a minhag hakadmonin. It's a very, very ancient minhag because the oil reminiscent of the oil of the Hanukkah story. So the Rambam's father talks about the importance of old minhagim, and he highlights the minhag of eating donuts on Hanukkah, which had been very widespread in the Arab countries. In the Ashkenazic countries, of course, the minhag was latkes, because they had potatoes in Eastern Europe, and also fried in oil. So, but the donut minhag is a very, very old minhag. And according to one source, we've mentioned before the Sforim Chisonium, the books that didn't make it into Tanakh. One of those books is a book called Yehudit, the book of Judith. And it talks about this woman, Judith, who killed a Syrian Greek general who had demanded first rights, meaning any marriage that took place, the general was the one who deflowered the virgin on the night of her marriage. That was called the night of the first right of the emperor, of the general. And when she got married, she invited him into her bedchamber, and she gave him fried dough and cheese. And then she killed him, which ended that particular minhag. And that is one source given for the donut story. Other sources, it's fascinating. The Chashmonaim could not purify the stones of the Mizbeach, and they had to bury them. So we eat donuts so we can make the bracha of Al Hamichya, which mentions Al Mizbechacha, a reference to the Mizbeach, commemorating our sadness of the loss of the original Mizbeach. Although we don't mention the Mizbeach in Birchas Hamazon, but we mention it in Al Hamichya. There's also a fascinating discussion whether dough that's fried in oil has the status of mizonos or lechem, which is also by itself a fascinating halakhic discussion, not for now. The last thing I want to say about donuts on Hanukkah is that a Dunkin' Donuts jelly donut has 290 calories. And it's been estimated that it would take about 2 hours of playing dreidels to burn off the 290 calories. So that's a little bit of trivia to enhance your Hanukkah dreidel playing or latke or donut eating. In any event, haneros halolu that we say when we light the menorah is based on a section in something called Maseches Sofrim. There are in Shas, in the Talmud, what we call Masechtos Katanos, minor tractates, which for some reason that I'll never understand is not included in the Daf Yomi cycle. I don't know why. There are Masechtos Katanos that deal with Tefillin and Mezuzah and Avelus and so forth. In any event, Maseches Sofrim is the source for Haneros Halolu. And the question that was agitating Rishonim is, when do you recite Haneros Halolu? When you're lighting the candles in between the first and the second candle, after you light the candles. It's a big machlokas Rishonim. And there are also differences in the text. And the differences in the text are important because the significance of the words. If you, according to most nuschos of the Maharil, for example, is mostly Minhag Ashkenaz, there are 36 words to represent the 36 candles if you omit the Shabbos. That's one symbolism. On the other hand, if you include the Shabbos and you include other nuschos, there are 44 words in 44 candles if you include the Shabbos. There's a lot of discussion about it. Also, aside from the nusach, what you include in it, when do you say Haneros Halolu? According to Maseches Sofrim, you say it in between the first two brachos, Lahadlik Ner and She'asa Nisim. According to Maseches Sofrim, that's not our minhag. The Maharil, who codifies most Ashkenazic minhagim, suggests that we say it after all three brachos. He doesn't get into discussion of which candles, but after all the brachos, you say it. The Marshal suggests after the first candle, and the Taz agrees with him. The Pri Megadim suggests that you light it after all the candles. You don't interrupt between the recitation of the brachos and the lighting of the candles. Saying Haneros Halolu would be considered a hefsek, an interruption. Rav Soloveitchik explains that Maseches Sofrim is describing Haneros Halolu. It's not just a prayer that we recite when we light the candles, but it has a din of Presume Nisa, the recitation declaring that the lighting is being performed to publicize the miracles. So therefore, you recite it immediately after lighting the candles. And She'asa Nisim is a bracha of Shevach v'Hodah, which is recited after you light. Again, there's a separate discussion. The Maharil suggests that She'asa Nisim is a birchos ha-mitzvah. And there's a whole discussion in the nature of the bracha. Is it a bracha praising God, or is it a bracha on the mitzvah of lighting candles? That's a separate machlokas. And if it's a birchos ha-mitzvah, then you can't recite Haneros Halolu until all the brachos are recited. So what Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, Rav's father, would try to fulfill all the different minhagim by saying, lighting the first candle and then reciting Haneros Halolu. It's a lot of complicated timing of when you recite it, put it mildly. But clearly, Haneros Halolu is not just some paragraph that to be rattled off. It's embroiled in a great deal of the halachic discussion as to what is the nature of that paragraph. Most minhagim follow the opinion that we recite it either as we're lighting the candles or after we're lighting the candles, depending on what your local minhag is. It's interesting that the Kohanim play a central role, obviously, in the story of Hanukkah. They were the leaders of the rebellion, and we talk about Ayidei Kohanecha Hakadoshim. The holy Kohanim are given a major role. The Kohanim represent, according to one view, Chesed. Normally, you defeat your enemies with gevura. However, the Kohanim did it out of love and chesed, not out of gevura. In other words, they obviously had to have acts of gevura, obviously, but the goal, the motivating theme of the rebellion was chesed, to go back to the Beis Hamikdash and follow halacha. The Lubavitcher Rebbe has a beautiful explanation, and he puts a stress on the Kohanim as part of the miracle, because they displayed tremendous mesiras nefesh. Normally, a person is required to give their life for 3 cardinal sins: Gilui Arayos, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah. And if you are in a public position, such as the Kohanim, if you are a leader, then you have a higher standard. And he said it was this mesiras nefesh, that they were willing to leave Yerushalayim and leave the Beis Hamikdash, that led to the greater miracles that took place. Okay. There's a whole long halachic discussion. I won't get into all the details concerning the kedusha of these candles. Haneras halalu kodesh heim. We say. So are the candles indeed kodesh? Are they? Can you use, for example, the oil, leftover oil for the candles, for something else after Hanukkah? If it's kodesh, then you can't. So there's a whole discussion about that. The Rosh Nusach of an Eresol is B'chol mitzvos shmonas yemei Hanukkah. Why does he add the word mitzvah? Because when there's no longer, it ties into the machlokas whether or not the oil is kodesh or not. There's a lot of detail here. Repetition on lahodos ulahalel l'shimcha hagadol. We already said this. Why do you have to add shimcha hagadol? Why does gadol have to modify shimcha? Normally, Hashem's name is sufficient. A lot of answers to these questions. There are a lot of questions asked on the structure of this paragraph, Haneros Halolu. Clearly, they're all talking about oil, and and it's important, and we've mentioned this before, whenever in halakhic literature we're talking about a nair is not a candle. A nair is an oil lamp. Candles were not used until much, much later. Oil is what they used to use for illumination. Your regular lamps were oil lamps. Haneros halalu refers not to the candles, but to the lamps or the oil source for the menorah. And this is an important aspect of our understanding of Haneros halalu. The Shabbos, of course, today, since we have electric lights in all of our homes, the Shabbos might be extraneous. People don't read by the light of candles or oil lamps anymore. But Minhag Yisrael, initially when the menorah was first used, that was their only source of illumination, were the oil lamps. So the Shabbos was there, so you shouldn't use the other candles, which were there for the purpose of the mitzvah. You shouldn't use it for any other purpose. You can't read by the light of the menorah. The Shabbos, so you can say, well, I'm using the light of the Shabbos. And that's why we have the Shabbos. But the machlokes is whether you can use the oil that you set aside for the menorah after Hanukkah. In all probability, you can. Interestingly, look, the words are very important. Elo lir'osam bilvad. The mitzvah is to look at the candles, look at the lamp, look at the menorah. That's for Sumenisa, to stand around and just gaze at the candles as they burn, or the lamp as they burn. And this is the whole purpose of Persumenisa. Persumenisa might not exist in a public sphere, but it certainly exists within your own home. And the whole purpose of Haneros Halalu is Persumenisa. And without reciting Haneros Halalu, it wouldn't be as recognizable that the lights are for the purpose of Pesume Nisa. And that's why I say, Elo L'Rosam Bilvad. You're not to use it, you're to gaze at it. And the open miracle, the Pach Shemen, as described, is really to recognize many of the hidden miracles that took place as well. The Yeshua, the military victory, which is played down. But even the many, many miracles that we don't even know that took place. The fact that a small band of non-military Kohanim could defeat Hellenists who were supported by the Syrian Greek army is in itself a major miracle, which the rabbis sought to minimize, but nevertheless, we have to acknowledge it. So when you light and make sure that you allow enough time this afternoon before you light Shabbos candles to light the menorah, and should have enough oil to last at least for an hour or so after it gets dark. And if you're using candles, use a bigger candle than a regular Hanukkah candle, because the regular Hanukkah candles don't last that long. But if you're using oil, make sure it has sufficient oil to burn for a couple of hours. And the menorah itself takes some time to stare at it, just to look at it and think about the Yeshuos, the various miracles that took place, and the fact that this small band of Hashmonaim was able to conquer the mighty Syrian Greek army to reestablish the Beis Hamikdash, which ultimately led to a period of independence until the Romans destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. But for a period of time, the Jewish community was functioning again. But the bad news was that the Hashmonaim made one major mistake, and I'll just end with that, something for you to think about over Shabbos, is that the Kohanim who took over the Beis Hamikdash also took over the leadership of the Jewish community. Now we have a Melech and we have a Kohen Gadol. These are two separate functions, and they should not be combined in one person. And unfortunately, the Hashmonaim, flushed with victory, assumed both titles, as king and as Kohen Gadol, and that led to a great deal of trouble. The Tzedukim, the Sadducees, emerged from that, and it caused tremendous trouble to the Jewish people, as we've discussed from time to time. So there's so much to talk about. Hanukkah may be a minor holiday, but there's a lot of halakhic discussion on the practices that emerge from it. So I wish you a lichtig in Hanukkah, a bright Hanukkah. Think about the Nisim and the Neflos, and hopefully we'll also be witness to miracles in our day as well.
Wally,
Yes.
how did the English word donut become the translation of Safgoniyot?
Interesting question. I don't know. The Sufganiyot, I don't know what the origin of the word donut is, what language that is.
I wouldn't think it's as old as the Safgoniyot.
Well, they weren't speaking English when they started Sufganiyot
Right.
in the Arab countries way back when. I would imagine the word donut is a shortened version of something you do with dough. Dough something or other, which became donut. I have to look it up and get back to you. I'll make a note of it, and I'll try to figure out where the word donut comes from. Interesting question.
Okay, thank you, Ron.
Anything else?
That's it.
Hanukkah.
Okay.
The Shabbos that failed to Hanukkah.
Wonderful Shabbos, everybody.
Hanukkah Sameach.
Hanukkah, lichtigen and a lustigen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Good Shabbos.